your time to address council, you certainly can do that. Hi, Pete.
Name's Pete Titus, Monroe resident. Before I speak about what I want to, I do want to commend Jim Little for his professionalism, for the responses he gives. I think he's an honest guy. I think he's, he believes in what he says, and his conclusions come from an honest direction. And I appreciate mostly the explanations he gives. And so I just, I want you to know that. I don't necessarily disagree with you 100%, but, you're to be commended, okay? I think you recall I was here last week, and I just wanted to know if you had made a decision. My suggestion was that you form a committee, advisory committee, with Jim LeMayo and other professionals within the community.
Yeah, I did, and I also talked to some of the council members, or most of them up here anyway. And Pete, I think your suggestion is a good one.
Mm-hmm.
If this would have been in November, maybe, of last year, and we're already into March, this council has had some time, and let's just be very honest, the new council said, gee, we just got put in for the change, to work better, give us an opportunity to do that. So I think overwhelmingly, this council is willing to work very diligently. We'll certainly, if you still feel that flavor going into 15, please come back. Right now, again, if this was in October, November of last year, before we're this deep into the fiscal year already, probably would have pursued that a little more heavy with the council. But again, I think at this time, just because of where we're at in the year, we need to get this budget resolved. I assure you, and I'm going to say this publicly, I hear what all of you said in regards to cuts and getting down to the nitty-gritty, if you will, get rid of any fat. I'm here to tell you, and I've said this to many of the council members up here, if we can't reduce at least somewhat, I understand, Mr. Little, if you remember just what he showed you last week, that chart.
Sure.
That is about the best explanation I've ever seen
The
on.
horseshoe chart.
Yeah, on a community where it starts, where it's growth, and how it can slip if you don't do your due diligence, if you will. And as he also stated very clearly, most of this tax increase has to do with infrastructure. We can't go out and borrow money on a bond issue anymore. We're tapped out of that. Matter of fact, I think we're 1% more, am I correct, Mr. Little, than where we
Well,
should?
no, I mean, you can go out and borrow money. I mean, it's
It's
just
gonna
like.
cost us more.
It's gonna cost us more, and then your debt service will go up, and that's the same as I mentioned before about a
We're
credit
not
card.
doing, in other words, if this council would just automatically do that, we're not doing you as well as us as taxpayers or this community right by it. So, and if you look at the legacy cost, some of that stuff is stuff that the can's been kicked down the road for years. Well, there's no more kicking. We either do what we need to do, or we're going to be in Act 47. And you know what Act 47 means? The state comes in, everything, you and I, as citizens, have absolute zero control what happens in this town. Zero. They tell us how much we can spend, where it's going. They don't even want to hear from citizens. So is this a tough budget for this council to deal with? Absolutely. But I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say it publicly. I've asked this council to review and make cuts everywhere they can. And if I feel at the end of the day, and I'm being very sincere when I say this, if I feel there's still cuts and just say they're not willing, and I'm pretty sure they are, I will veto the taxes and make us go back to square one. I agree with a lot of what's been said. We have to cut and reduce. I don't want a tax increase either. But I also like the services that we have.
Okay.
So Pete, I appreciate what you're saying. If this would have been October, November last year, we could have probably pulled that off, but hell, we're almost to halfway into March. So,
Okay. Let me just say a few words then.
Sure, it's your time.
I guess let me start by, I have a flaw. One of my big flaws is when I stumble on to what I think is a good idea, I have a hard time letting go of it, okay? You know, the authors of our home rule charter put that power in there to allow you to form advisory committee. I just think that is an act of brilliance. As I said last week, it's because it allows you to tap into the experts in this community for free. So I can't say enough for that ability. That's
I
given to me.
appreciate what you're saying.
Okay. And in the light of the fact, well, let me first say this. The biggest message that I hear from the residents is before you institute the tax increase, they want to make sure every stone is unchecked, everything is checked, that you do, to the best of your ability, the due diligence to make sure, in fact, a tax increase is the best solution. And I think part of that strategy would be one of these advisory committees. It's a resource, a very important resource, that could be used as part of your due diligence. And that's why I have a hard time letting go of the idea. We have 4 newbies up here, 4 people that do not have the benefit of going through a whole year before they have to make up a budget, right? I have to think the 4 new council people are pretty overwhelmed. I have to think that. Not only do they have to deal with the day-to-day problems and the people that call them up, but they're faced with a budget that, quite frankly, it's new to them. So in the light of that, I think not only would the older members benefit such a committee, but especially the new people. They're going to be voting on a tax raise when they're, quite frankly, they have very little experience with the budget. I don't think that's a fair thing to do with them. So
Let me just interrupt you one real quick there, Pete, and I'm going to just talk on behalf of what I know of the new council. If Mr. Wilson,
you know what?
Mr. Caleri,
If you would,
and, wait a minute, and Linda Gatiss, they have business backgrounds. They certainly know budgets, and they certainly have experience in that world.
could I finish what I'm saying
Sure.
before
Sure,
you
go
go?
ahead. Go ahead. I'm
Because
sorry, Pete. I was just trying to
The only
help you
reason is I'll lose my train of thought.
Oh, I'm sorry,
and then-
Pete. I apologize.
Yeah, and you don't want that to happen.
No, I'm good.
So, I already lost it.
Sorry, Pete. I was trying to help you out there,
Okay,
man.
All right, as I was saying, it's hard for me to let go of this idea. So let me kind of approach it from a different direction, okay? I think, I don't want to overstate it, but I think between the mayor and Mr. Lou, I think they presented a picture, we have a budget crisis. I would say, is that fair to say?
Very
I mean,
fair.
as you say, Acts 47, and I know at the one meeting, you said if we don't deal with things within 5 to 7 years, the state,
Yeah.
okay. And Mr. Little, of course, with, the significant tax increase, that's a statement in itself.
Sure.
And that, the horseshoe diagram, where, the growth is rapid, then levels off, you come to a plateau, and then it starts to dip, and we're in that little dip now, right? And then next, you fall, and
You fall or go up. It depends on what. we do
Right,
as a
right,
community.
right. If things aren't dealt with, right, then you fall. But the picture he created was, the fall is unpleasant. You end up with a community, and he named the community, I don't want to name them, but the idea is.
Homestead. I grew up there, that's why I
Yeah,
said it.
I just don't, I just feel uncomfortable doing
That's
that. But
all right.
the point is, you end up with a community that has unemployment, crime, low property value. No one wants that. So we have a crisis, I would say, budget crisis that we want solved. So let me suggest this. There's a saying, the necessity is the mother of invention. In other words, when you come to a crisis, you're forced to be creative, okay? All right. So my suggestion is this, and I know Mr. Little named the four, the OPEB, the capital improvement, the staffing, and the fund balance. Those are the four places he wants the money to go to. We do not need, it's not necessary for this year to increase the taxes $3.3 million to fund these. Everything will survive 1 year. I understand what you're saying, you don't want to kick the can too far down the road, but the reason I'm saying don't raise the taxes this year, because it will give you an opportunity. Necessity is the mother of invention. It will give you an opportunity to investigate all avenues before you come to a decision on how to deal with the budget problem. If you raise the taxes now, starting this year, I think it gets you out of making the hard decisions. Once you have the 3.3, just hear me out, once you have the $3.3 million, you really don't have to deal with, on a superficial level, you have to make some cuts and there's some decisions to be made on the budget. But the hard decisions, you don't have to make. And I'm going to give you a couple examples. Beth, I think, made some good points. And let me just give you 4 or 5 examples of what I mean by that. All right, for instance, and as Beth said, the legal department, okay? Budgeted this year between, all the different, the zoning, the planning committee, and the municipal.
Civil service.
It's about $275,000, okay? You pass this budget with a $3 million tax increase, you don't have to make a hard decision about those costs, okay? So my suggestion is you could have, in this year, during this year, don't pass the tax raise, get a committee together to look and see, gee, can we hire an in-house solicitor, one solicitor in-house, and save a significant amount of money? Once you pass this tax raise, you don't have to look at that issue. You don't have to look, you're getting yourself out of making a hard decision. Okay, that's why. You could do the same with the engineering department. We have, one engineer and consultants. Form a committee, have a look at it. Could we use one engineer to do everything? And if so, could we save money? So if you don't pass this tax rate increase this year, now you have the next 8 months to do that. Another example would be the union contracts, both police and public works. And Mr. Harvey, you correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is on the current police contract, and I spoke with a council person about it, and the newspapers said this, that there are 4 levels of pay. Start $52,000, basically $10,000 raise.
I think there's 5.
Okay, 5. $52,000 goes up to $91,000.
Well, they go up in different increments. There's starts at level A, ends at E.
Okay. And over what time period is that?
That's what I'm saying. I think the first increase happens after 6 months, typically after they're
okay.
off probation.
Okay,
And then after a year,
Okay.
so that's 2.
okay,
And then it goes a whole year
okay,
before they get to level C.
okay.
I'm not sure, but I think it's a year every.
Okay,
so C and
okay,
D.
fair enough. That's what the newspaper said, that's what the council person said. So, within 4 years, first-year officer, within 4 or 5 years, say 5 years, goes from $52,000 to $91,000. To me, and I think to the residents, and I value the police, don't get me wrong, that doesn't seem fair to the taxpayer. So from year 5 to year 25, you're carrying that 90,000 plus burden. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay. So from 24 to 20 years, those people they're making $90,000 plus dollars.
I don't want to interrupt you.
Okay,
You're on a roll.
yeah, you don't want that to happen. So my point is, you pass this tax raise this year, you don't have to deal with that issue. I mean, it's to make the hard decisions when it comes to bargaining. For instance, a hard decision would be, instead of year 5 making $90,000, do what the school does. Their schedule goes over, 20 years, so maybe year 20, you go to $90,000. That seems fair to me. And I think it's fair to the taxpayer. So by not passing this tax hike this year, that allows you to make the hard decision when it comes to the contract. And the same goes with municipal, with the public works. I know it's the custodian. I'm just going to pick on the custodian because that's the only one I understand. They make $57,000, $56,000, okay, in the contract. I mean, I have to say, I think that contract has to be revisited, you know, the next time it comes up. I think there's things that, you know, I think that's a lot of money for a custodian. I know the schools don't pay the custodians that much. So my point is, you pass this tax raise, this tax hike this year, that's another issue you will not have to make a hard decision on, because you'll have plenty of money. You may bargain somewhat with them, but not to the extent that you would if you didn't have the tax hike. And same with the heads of departments. I know, it seems to me they're all, pretty much all getting a raise this year. I mean, I can't tell, their salaries are going up over last year. So to me, that indicates they're getting a raise. You don't pass this tax hike, and you have to deal with that issue. Maybe we should do a freeze. We should freeze their salaries. You know, we have a crisis. Maybe that's the time to freeze their salaries or to give a lesser increment of raise. Okay? So my point is, therefore, and I know I'm redundant, but these are hard decisions. And by not passing the tax this year, it gives you another 8 months to form these different advisory groups, to look into them, to help give information, and so that for the long term, for the long run, on what to do with the budget situation. I guess that's the only. I'm done. So if you want me to sit down and you
No,
want to
you're
speak,
fine,
or-
Pete. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I,
Sure, Ron, that's your,
I just wanted to tell you that contracts are, the same thing with most of the expenses that most people are getting at here, weren't derived over last month. They came from 7 and 8 years ago. Nobody invented this deficit. It came because nobody addressed it, including everybody out here, because I came to a lot of council meetings for fire department and police department reasons, and nobody was here complaining. Why? Because they dipped into the fund balance and they said, hey, folks, no tax increase, the budget's balanced. Nobody even looked as to where they got the money. Okay, you, me, everybody. As long as they said no tax increase, everybody went prancing home and thought it was okey-dokey. And every year, we got deeper in the hole and deeper in the hole, but nobody cared because there was no tax increase. So nobody came up, 2 people, I think, at the last budget meeting that I was at, okay? And they kept dipping and dipping. So I came up here as a council person because of residents like yourself that kind of woke my eyes up to this thing, and I did an investigation. And I can tell you, since 2010, there was $5 million taken out of the fund balance to balance the budget. Round number. $5 million. That's almost 2.5 times your tax increase. And then there. In 2010, they spent last year $52,023 on legal fees on this investigation. And where did that go? Not done. They also spent I sat in front of the computers and looked at these numbers. $10,710 on the private investigator to tell you what? Not done there. Working backwards. Mr. Little just didn't leave. He said, take this severance or we're going to fire you. I don't know what you would do, but I'd have taken the severance and left. So did he, $62,000 worth. Mr. Silka, same thing. Didn't do what they wanted to do, another $62,000. Where was everybody when this was going on? Not done. They fired Doug Cole. Arbitration, $3,100, he wins. Oh, by the way, $11,000 in back pay. Not done yet. Bought a police van out there that's been sitting there since I think almost it's been purchased. $40,161. Where was everybody saying something about this stuff? Want a total? $840,971, not counting the $5 million they spent out of the fund deficit. Where was everybody then? We got 2 months to get a budget passed. We're all talking about committees and long-term corrections. I'm all for the long-term corrections. I'm ready to dive into that, but what do we do tomorrow? What do we do to operate the borough tomorrow? Somebody tell me, because I'm the new guy on the block, as you pointed out, how long are we allowed to temporarily go month to month on this budget? I don't know. Is all I'm saying is that the minute 7 years, 8 years of, because it goes beyond these last guys. I just named some facts from them, okay? Nobody said a word. Dip into the fund balance, balance the budget, blow it over, everybody will go home, and they did.
Ron, I'd like to differ with that, because I know personally, I was a councilman here for 2 years, and I argued every one of those facts.
Well, no, I'm not saying you didn't, Steve, but I'm saying what ended up.
But
What
you're
happened?
saying that nobody spoke up. I know that I did. I feel very sure that,
I'm talking of the budget meetings I attended, Steve.
no, I know what he meant, but I'm just
There
trying to say
wasn't
that.
any residents or any residents that came up. You argued it, but nobody out here did.
And you were in a minority also, Steve.
And all I'm saying is that this all
I
occurred
believe it.
over a long period of time. This didn't happen in light switch, and suddenly we're $2.5 million in the hole.
And Ron, let me interrupt, and you know what, Pete? He didn't even mention the $2 million OPEB trust fund.
Oh, I was
that
getting there.
hasn't- Okay, I mean, that's even on top of the 5.8 million.
And
I mean, we're in a crisis.
I agree, I'm not disputing that. I'm not disputing the situation. My suggestion is a way to handle it so that, I think, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Mr. Little, but the impression I got is that you don't want to kick the can down the road too far. However, by not funding these four things this year, not adding to the OPEB, to the capital improvement, to the staffing, to the fund balance, I mean, we've got along with the staff, we're what, I think 25 people down over the last 10 years. So that's not a new situation. I'm just suggesting you go 1 year longer on that, not raise the taxes. They're to fund that stuff. They're not to operate, right?
Let me just put it this way, just on the infrastructure, you're saying don't do that. We've got a lot of potholes out there. You're saying don't fix it? You have to
No,
have
I'm
money to
not
fix
saying
it.
that.
But we need the money to do that. See, we don't have nothing we have nothing to dip into to do that right now.
how are we
That's
going to
not-
fix the flooding?
that's
at
not-
Willowhead?
The Willowhead issue. We have the Ramsey Road issue. I mean, these
The
are
impression
things.
I get is that
Pete,
there
I
is money
appreciate-
in those four. Down the road, you don't want to kick the can too far down the road. 1 year, I don't think,
Pete, if I may, we're obligated, I'm over here.
oh, okay.
We're obligated by the state government to maintain a fund balance of 15% of our total budget, okay? Today, I think where are we?
7.5.
7.5%. Okay, the OPED, we have an obligation of $20 million, and right now, we are, what are we, 2.5 in the OPEB?
We should be putting $2.2 million, or
In it.
2.3 each year into the OPEB fund in order to keep it solvent, just like you do with your pension plans. There's an actuarial valuation that's performed, and we have an outstanding liability of $20 million, and it should, $2.3 million should be put into that each year, just like you put money into your pension plan, same thing. And stock, how it's invested, it goes up, it comes down, and there's money taken out. Now, right now, there's just money being taken out. And as Mr. Griesbach mentioned at the last council meeting, I think, he says, in 5 years, that's all going to be depleted. But, Pete, I just want to address what you're saying. You have salient points. The but there is if we would do what you are saying, and let's say that we negotiated contracts, labor contracts, and they did cut expenses, we're still going to be next year a tax increase. Because as I said about a half an hour ago, this is not looking at operational costs. Now, part of it is, because there's employees that have been put back into the budget from the tabled budget to the tune of $785,000 with benefits. There's money that was put back in, $467,000 in the unassigned balance in order to get our fund balance back up, so we have a better bond rating. That's operational, and I agree with you. But as we keep moving along, year after year after year, you're talking about long-term costs that are here and they're due. And as Mr. Harvey was talking about, everything was just being taken out of the unassigned fund balance because it was there, and it was very easy to do. Everything that you are saying was talked about internally 6, 7 years ago. And I'm not saying, what you're saying is correct. And nobody disputes you, nobody disputes Mrs. Fishman. You're correct in a lot of ways. But it's the cost coming down the road that I see, this council sees. They're not going to go away. You're talking about saving tens of thousands of dollars, and I'm saying there's millions of dollars of liability coming down the road we're staring at. So you might save $100,000. You may save $200,000 out of a $28 million budget. But we're staring at we should be putting $2.2 million in an OPEB fund. You're talking about a capital improvement program that, quite frankly, even $1 million is not going to put it where it should be. But something has to be put in there. We have to stop floating bonds all the time like we've been doing for the last 10 years. You have to have, as I said before, a diversified income stream into your capital improvement program. So we could do what you're saying, but we're going to be there again next year looking at a tax increase.
Okay.
I guarantee it.
Well, and I understand what you're saying, and I don't really disagree in the long run with what you're saying. I guess my position is, I want the best decisions made for the short and long run. And obviously, I want the residents to get involved through these advisory committees. I think they're just a great idea. So I want, over the next year, I would love to see, before you raise the taxes, have these advisory groups examine all parts of the government to what we could save, other methods of raising revenue, see what they come up with. They may agree with you 100%, and I have no problem with that. You have professionals, you have honest people on these committees, and if they come up next year and say, Tim Little's right, the best option is the tax raise you recommend, I'm good with that, because I will then think, well, we got a thorough investigation. And that's really my point. I don't really disagree with, in generally speaking, with what you're saying about, funding everything. That's not really my dispute with you. It's just, I want to make sure the hard decisions are made. And I don't think they're going to get made if you get the $3 million this year without having these committees. I don't think they're going to get made.
Well, Pete, I'm going to and Pete, your comments are great, but the tough decisions still have to be made.
I agree.
We're just at the beginning stages, and I think Ron touched on a little bit. Some of this stuff is contractual, and some of those contracts are coming up later this year. Some in December, I think one in June. Tough decisions. There is no choice. There is no choice, and that's for all our unions. They're going to have to come to the table and step up to the plate because we're all in this together. And if they don't, there'll be cuts that nobody, you as residents, them as union folks, won't be happy with. There's just no money. Even with, I'm not sure where this tax increase is going to go, because again, it's still, we're taking feedback yet. This council certainly has options to reduce or leave it where it is. We'll know that soon. But the bottom line is the tough decisions are still going to have to be made, Pete. There's no getting around, none. I assure you, as I'm looking you right in your eye, tough decisions will have to be made.
I want to say something right now about the word crisis. And the mayor mentioned that word, and we're not in a crisis. I will disagree with the mayor on that. But we don't want to get there. All right? Operationally, from a fiscal perspective, we're about in the middle of the pack with the rest of the municipalities in Allegheny County. But I can see, and I think this council can see, where we're heading if we don't have additional revenue for long-term projects and liability that we have. We have a great potential to cure this problem. There's a lot of municipalities that don't. They don't have the resources, they don't have the chance to have the economic development that we have. All we have to do is just change course here, and we're going to be okay. But I think what the mayor is saying is that we don't want to get to that point. We don't want to get to the point that Mrs. Fishman is talking about, that we have a preliminary study where the DCED would come in here. They would, I know definitely they would not do that. They wouldn't. They would say, Tim, you know and I know we have a lot of other municipalities that are way worse than Monroeville. So that they wouldn't not waste, but they just wouldn't utilize their human resources on us. So I would not say that we're in a crisis,
Close.
but I think that we have to make some course corrections so we don't get there.
Okay.
Thank
That's
you,
it.
Pete.
Okay. Well, good night.
I'd like to make one more comment. There is a issue out there that we haven't touched upon, and that is stormwater. Alcoasand is under a obligation from the federal government to improve all of their stormwater and sanitary sewers, for lack of a better term. They're going to be required to separate stormwater from sanitary water. And for us, it's going to mean basically a not complete, but our infrastructure is at least 50 years old or more. We have some areas that the stormwater pipes are collapsing, and we have to address that, and that's going to be millions of dollars.
Just so everybody knows, the latest figure on that for Allegheny County was $3.3 billion just for Allegheny County. That it's federally mandated. There is not even there's no getting around it. We're going to be stuck with the bill.
That's only on the sanitary side.
That is correct.
Tom's talking about stormwater, which is a separate one.
So that's even more. So it's and I'll concede to Tim that maybe we're not in crisis, but in my opinion, we're damn close. So we really do need to change course, and hopefully you all will support whatever decision this council, because I assure you, they're going to work, and they are working.
Just to add to the stuff we're adding up, in this state publication, you'll be happy to know that the state government passed or has on the table amendments to the borough code, which we have to follow. The Second Amendment raised the cap on the operating reserves that the borough must keep from 5% to 25% in the general fund. So that's something else we're going to have to answer to once it becomes law. And
That's $7 million on the budget.
the one thing they did do for us is they're passing a law that's saying that we can start to advertise electronically. So as long as we put out a notice about the special website that we're going to advertise on, all our meetings, all the specifications, all the bids, instead of paying, newspapers, we're going to be able to put it on that website.
That'll save thousands.
Hooray. But, I mean, it's something, but
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, this is your time to address council. You certainly may do so. This is still the Citizens Night proportion of the meeting. Seeing none, we'll close that. Oh, I'm sorry, Ralph, go ahead, I apologize.
You weren't fast enough. You
You're on the agenda.
Ralph, state your name for the record, please.
Ralph Greco, resident of Monroeville. How long ago did we have a tax increase?
Last year was a quarter mil.
Quarter of a mil.
Quarter of a mil.
Quarter of a mil.
Prior to that, it was about 20 years ago, prior to that.
But on top of that, we had a tax assessment, which brought in how much?
It decreased Monroeville's property overall about 200 million. There was a decrease,
It was a decrease.
yes.
Was that
Because there was a lot of the appeals and stuff.
The part I don't understand, I know my assessment went up.
Mine did too. Some did not. Some went down. Mine went up as well.
Ralph, that was mostly on commercial properties that appealed.
Okay.
And, go ahead, if you have any other questions.
No,
I was
that's all
just
right.
gonna see if I had the exact figures on it. I think it was if I mentioned at the last council meeting, I believe, because of the appeals, $558,000 of revenue was lost last year, okay, because of that, the tax appeals. And we have $70 million of tax appeals outstanding right now. Now, we don't know which way they're going to go.
Well, wait a minute, Ralph, and I think this will help. Mr. Dyson would also,
Last year was an assessment year, and there's an anti-windfall statute that precluded the municipality from making any more than 105% of what it made the year before, or 5% more. We had to stay within that window, and we did. As a result, we had to lower taxes.
But did the borough still end up with more money than they had before the assessment?
5%,
5%. So they had an increase.
yes.
very small.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, they increased 5%, but they lost $585,000
When I say that,
in tax
they have,
revenue.
yes, they had to then, that's correct, that's what they did.
Say that again so everybody understands that, Bruce.
What happened is, we lost tax revenue. It would have been much higher. However, the fact remains is because of the statute, we weren't allowed to assess that amount of money. It had to stay at that lower number, which wouldn't have meant a tax increase. It would have been, the increase would have come through assessments.
Which is a tax increase to a certain extent for the
To a-
residents. anyway.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so now you had a tax increase, then you had an assessment which increased the taxes for the residents at least, and now we're talking about another tax increase. I mean, recently I went out to get a petition signed, and the people just, they want to know when it's going to end. Because there's people out there that told me they're cutting pills in half because they can't afford to get them. I mean, we've got to have a little bit of understanding of what some of these people on fixed incomes are going through. What may seem like, I would think if the library thing went through, it would probably cost about $150 a home. Am I right? Somewhere in that
Right.
neighborhood?
150 to 200, yes.
About probably $136.
Okay, so it's in between 100 and 100 and a half probably. But, and here we have people that can't even afford to take their pills. It's not right. The other thing is, when you increase taxes on homes, you depreciate those homes, in my opinion. That makes them much harder to sell.
Nobody's going to disagree. Ralph, I don't think anybody sitting up here or sitting there or on TV wants any type of tax increase. But again, we're a viable community. Do you want to stay that way? I mean, some of this stuff has been passed on through a lot of politics, and I'll just leave it at that. And that's being very blunt, very honest.
If this increase gets passed, does that mean we're going to be a year later?
As far as I'm concerned, no. We need to really tighten it, and as I said to Pete, our speaker, tough decisions we haven't even gotten started on them yet, because there's contracts we have to deal with. But I assure you, and for all the employees listening, they have to know, I mean, we're all in this together. We either work together on this, or we're gonna be in bad shape, and I
You
don't
know,
wanna see that happen. I know nobody does here either.
believe me, this borough has wonderful services in it. And in a sense, we've probably been spoiled. I mean, I have so much admiration for the fire department and the police department and the workers
Sure.
have done, they're all really nice people. And I thank you, Ron, for being a volunteer all those years. Because I know in a particular case, I would have lost my life if it wasn't for the Monroeville Fire Department. But, you know, it's almost like, I don't know how to put this, but we're at a Cadillac level, the way we're spending right now. And we got a Ford income coming in.
But you know what happens? I agree, I somewhat agree with you. But you know what happens, and I found out just in 2 months. And not to use names, but people will come up and say what you said, and it's honestly true. And then tomorrow during the snow, they're wondering where the salt truck is. And then the next day, they complain about the expenses, and then the next day, they're worried about the road with a pothole in it. And, you know, you scratch your head and say, okay, do you want me to cut money, or do you want your road salted? Do you want me to cut money, or do you want police service? Do you want me to cut money, or do you want the dispatch center? Do you want me to cut? You know, a lot of people are speaking with forked tongue. They're used to, you're right, they're used to having very good services. They're used to looking out the window and the road's clear. You know, call the police department, 2 cars there immediately, you know. But then, in all these years, you know, the price of everything has gone up, not just labor, not just benefits, but tires and gas and insurance, and we've held the line all those years because they've dipped into the fund balance. And it all finally came down to the bottom of the funnel, and here we are. You know, I was put up here, I think, to do what the residents want to do. If they want the services cut,
You know,
but the bottom line is, I don't think they do. Of all my door-to-door, most of the residents said they don't want their services cut. You know, I don't know what, you know, tough decision, very tough decision.
And Ralph, your comments about the seniors, if you remember last several, we're acutely aware of some of our seniors on these fixed incomes.
and then they see a situation where things are so bad, and we have someone else asking for all this money for something that's probably not absolutely necessary,
What's that?
the library,
Oh,
you know.
well, that may be able to, if it goes on the ballot, you're going to get to say yes or no.
Well, I'll tell you what, if it goes on the ballot, it would probably be
The residents get to decide.
the best thing that could happen, because all them people that signed that petition for me sure in heck aren't going to vote for it.
Yes,
Again, that's the democratic process. If they have the signatures, which I'm pretty sure that they do, it'll get on the ballot for November, and you as residents will decide, yea or nay. I mean, but again, that's one of many issues that we're going to have to decide and deal with. They're tough issues, Ralph, there's no question.
I mean, we can't continue to spend the Cadillac.
There's no question,
We
Ralph.
just can't do it.
None. Nobody's going to disagree with that. But right now, we have contracts we have to live by, but they are coming due. I assure you, this administration, with with the backing of this council, and hopefully the employees and the unions will work with us so we can secure a better future for Monroeville. We don't have to come back and do any more tax increase. We don't have to lay any employees off or cut positions.
And I also want to say that, yeah, I don't have anything against the library. Library has its function, does a wonderful job. Although I will admit that there was quite a few people that said to me that, you know, they go on the internet, the kids today, most of them, to get their information. Why do we need this, you know?
Well, again, Ralph, they'll make that decision, you as residents, so, again, I'm not sure if they have their numbers to get it on the ballot, but that's certainly you.
Well, yeah, I wanted to bring it to their attention too, what this is going to cost, just to pass this one thing. Most people aren't that informative. You know, hopefully there'll be something in the paper to help them realize how much the taxes are going to go up for this. You know, they might be thinking, well, what's $10 or $15, you know? But,
For some folks, that is money.
well, it's not going to be 10 or 15, though. It'll be a lot more than that. But I thank you.
You're welcome, Ralph. Thank you for coming up. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, we'll leave it open. Come on down. You sign in, state your name for the record.
John Patterson, and I do live in Monroeville. And I will really try to make it brief. I know you want to get I'll get out of here. A couple of questions before I speak. They are these. Is the police contract up for renegotiation this year?
Yes.
Okay. May I make a few suggestions as a citizen? I was surprised to hear one of my fellow citizens bring up the fact that these incremental increases to the policemen are every year. Perhaps you should look at them as increases over a 20-year period instead of a 5-year period. That may make the police union choke, but maybe a compromise could be reached at 10 years, something along those lines. I brought up at the last meeting that at a 6% contribution to health insurance benefits, the police are nowhere near close to the average contribution of a family in the United States of America. And even if you took them from 6 to 16%, they'd still be under what the average family contributes for their health insurance. I would submit that to look at overtime pay could save you significant money, as well as what perhaps is a bone in the throat of many of us, longevity pay for a police force that is among the best paid in the state. Those would be my suggestions for the police force. Another question is this regarding the rest of the employees in the borough. The OPEB,
OPEB.
contributions. Do new hires have a different set of rules than existing employees?
Yes.
They do. So,
Well, that is with the non-union people.
okay.
The non-union people do, but now the union contracts, some of that has been changed also. But not all of it, okay, with respect to the OPEB. We talked about that last.
So the contracts with unions are pretty much the same, or?
No, they have been, even with the unions, as we talked about at the public hearing last week, you used to have where they would have health benefits until they're 65, and even with their spouse. Well, now, if you're hired like me, I don't have that. All right, what I have is an RHS, which is like a 401k, but it's like a 457, that $1,000 each year is put into it, and then I take that when I retire, and it's for medical benefits. Okay, so when I retire, and that supplements my Medicare, whereas with some of the retirees, most of them now, they have Freedom Blue. When they hit 65, it's supplemental with their Medicare. So there have been changes there relatively recently, let's say since 2005. But a lot of the legacy costs, where the OPEB has come from, goes back
Many years.
Many years.
many decades.
But you've put into place, just generally speaking, things in terms of your hiring so that we're not repeating those legacy costs from the past.
Correct, and that has been done in an incremental fashion through the years, but it should be done in a geometric fashion because costs go up, sometimes not incrementally, although healthcare costs have leveled off in the last couple of years. They haven't been skyrocketing like they did in the 90s and in the 2000s.
Sure.
They've leveled off.
Okay. The 11 new employees that I guess were put back in the budget that were taken out previously, maybe you just need to take a good hard look at those. And I'm sure you will, but as a citizen, I would like to ask you to do that. I think that's very important. Capital improvements obviously are necessary. I can appreciate your concern that we don't want to go into more debt to, incur bond increase, the percentage bonding or interest rate that we pay on bond issues, and that 11% of the budget, I think it was, you said, is pretty high.
Correct.
And it needs to be cut back. I agree there, but maybe take a look at capital improvements and say, okay, we'd like to do all of these, but maybe we'll just do 60% of them, in the coming year or two. And I don't know what they would be. We've elected you folks to
John,
make those
be honest-
difficult decisions.
John, if you remember in Tim's original budget, he said to put $1 million in for capital improvement for this year.
Okay.
That is so small, that won't last. Paul, help me out here, $1 million, how long? I mean, that don't even fix a whole road, does it?
Well, typically, our paving program is $1 million a year, and that's probably not enough, just for paving. That doesn't have anything to do with storm
I
sewers
mean,
or
and that don't even
traffic
count,
signals.
John, when we have like the Willow Hedges and the Ramsey Road
Yeah.
issues and all that.
Let me ask you a question, sir. Now, let's pick 10 people out in this room. And we'll say the first 6, you're going to get taken care of. Now, you 4, forget it. You can't have it. Now, how do we do that?
It's not easy.
Okay.
Well, but
May
you
I
appreciate
say,
what we're
may I
saying.
say that years ago, when I was a youngster, I was a township commissioner, and we did have to do that sometimes. Not everybody got everything. I think you know that,
Oh,
and it's
there's no
not a
question.
pleasant
The
deal.
cost of doing business years ago wasn't the same as it is today. And the cost for us to do business today and to continue the services that we provide, it's almost impossible right now because of the increases.
But you do bring a good.
And we still have to deal with all the unions. You think we're going to go into negotiations with the police department, and we're going to go into negotiations with Public Works, and they're going to say, oh, sure, guys, we'll take a cut, and we'll do this, and we'll do that. When's the last time you dealt with a union?
I understand. I
Okay,
understand
okay.
that, but what I'm saying is, as a taxpayer and as a citizen, I'm asking you to do that.
Well, we inherited most of these problems.
Right.
We walked in the door on January 6th, and as Ron said, there was almost $8 million total used in the past 4 years. Not any fault of the 3 councilmen that are here tonight. It's the fault of the 4 councilmen that were here that carried the majority of the votes. These 3 guys, they had to sit on their hands. There wasn't anything they could do. Now we have an opportunity to take care of the municipality, and that's what we plan to do. We don't want a tax increase. However, there has to be one.
And let me just back you up on this, John, and I do agree that even with us putting that $1 million in, there's just no way we're going to be able to cover every issue infrastructurally that needs to be addressed. Because let's be honest, Monroeville's still a great-looking community, but we are 50-plus years old. things break down. You know, I mean, that's just, you know, but I appreciate it, and I think your comments are very good, and you're singing to the choir, as they say.
Mr. Little or Lytle, I'm sorry.
Little.
Little, okay. You very adeptly brought up the parabolic curve at our last meeting, and I did appreciate that. I would make two comments on it. I think perhaps we're a little bit further on the downside of that curve maybe than you imagined.
That's a judgment call.
Yeah. I would say this, though, and Mr. Mayor, you mentioned Act 47, which none of us wants to see. But one of the reasons that Act 47 has happened in many cities and municipalities across the nation is because of the benefits of the public employees unions. And, you know, that's a problem. And I think that really seriously needs to be addressed. Plus, part of that parabolic curve, too, is not only that municipalities aren't taking in enough revenue, it's tax increases, which do, as one of the gentlemen here said earlier, do depreciate property values in time, not immediately, but in time. And I think philosophically, that's part of that curve. And, you know, Monroeville is unique. I've lived here for 20-some years and have enjoyed it very much. I don't know that I can legitimately compare us to another municipality, but let's just look at maybe one or two, which, you know, may be, again, some apples and oranges here, but we wouldn't want to become like Forest Hills or Penn Hills in terms of the devaluation of property. And if we're looking at tax increases and this massive increase in sewage and water rates because of the federal government, and I do understand that, but, you know, it's a double or triple whammy, and it's just not good. So I would encourage the board to really take into consideration all that's been said tonight, and I guess I'll stop and I'll say a prayer that God will bless you in your deliberation.
And John, I just want to tell you honestly, thank you for your, we do listen to you as residents, okay? It's not easy, especially when you're having the issues that this council's been presented with, but I assure you, we will work.
Thank you.
Betsy, please.
Hi, Betsy Desmond from Monroeville. You know, he was talking about Penn Hills and how all their depreciation. I'm not for the taxes, but was anybody out on the roads on Sunday? I have a new Honda Civic, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Left Garden City, went to Old William Penn to go to Penn Hills. As soon as I went under that tunnel, now it hadn't snowed, to go get my grandkids, it was solid snow. Picked them up, I went on Center Road to take them to their father. As soon as I hit Plum, there was 4 car accidents by the ski slopes, down by the apartments. Monroeville roads were clear. Now, maybe not every single one of them, but if you had to get somewhere, and we had no salt, we did it. And ask the people if they want to get rid of their garbage and go to waste management so you don't have to raise their taxes. That would cost the exact same amount that we're going to pay to have the tax raised. Well, at least they'll be able to keep our garbage, right? With this tax increase?
No services are getting cut.
You know, they want to set, you know, take out the garbage, get rid of that, I mean, this is what I'm hearing. And if you take that, it's still going to cost us the same amount of money.
Maybe more bets.
Yeah. But as far as the
And
roads,
they'll also only let you put out 2 cans, nothing else.
I know. And there's only me and my husband, and I put out 4, as these guys will tell you. All right, that's all.
Thank you.
I don't even know what to say about that, Bets, but
She'll tell you.
I'll leave it open for anybody else who would like to address council. Seeing none, I will now close the Citizens Night portion of the meeting, and we're going to move over to our 2000.
Mr. Mayor,
I'm
excuse
sorry.
me, could we have 5
Take a break?
And we have the library. on the
In the
agenda.
library.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay, well, I thought we were gonna do that for, okay, well, library, come on up.
But
Does she need a break?
She needs a
You
break.
need a break?
I'd
like to take.
Oh, never mind, I'm
5
sorry, I'm
break.
missing everything up here. We'll take a 5 or 10-minute break, I apologize.
Thank you.
And then I'll
Jump in.
have to go to
We're back in session, and I thank you for being patient with us. And right now, we're going to have our library board, they have some comments they would certainly like to address. So if you'll please sign in, state your name for the record that you live in Monroeville.
Okay. I'm Lisa Fennessy. I live in Monroeville, and I am the president of the Monroeville Public Library Board. And I'm here tonight, I know we talked, I think, last time you had a work session, about a special question on, it is actually going to be for the May ballot.
Okay, babe, I'm sorry, I thought
Yeah.
it was November, I apologize.
And so what I'm presenting to you tonight are the signatures that we have collected. So in order to get this on the ballot, we are required to have 172 signatures. So what we have here is 455 valid signatures. We did some sort of pre-work looking at the signatures. Also, everybody who circulated the petitions were registered voters and Monroeville residents, and they've all been notarized. So I'll give these to you.
Please. Thank you.
Lisa, this is a copy. Now, you will,
We will take the originals, so this is for you to, you can examine our signatures. You have, I think.
This is a copy.
That is a
Yeah.
copy. We have the originals, so.
Yeah,
you
'cause
don't
that
have
was
to
You're
worry
going to
about
take those down and file them.
Yes, yes. So, yeah, you have something on the agenda, I think, for next week to make a motion that, you've reviewed them and we've, done everything that we need to do. So if I could have a couple of minutes, I'd really like to thank Diane Lindsay, who chaired our committee, those folks who gathered the signatures and all the people who have signed in support of the library so far, and really just share a couple of things with you. I know I shared some things with council last time, but I think there's a little bit of confusion about the question and what we're looking at. So it is a ballot question for the citizens. It is for 1 mil. What people may not realize is right now that the municipality funds us probably the equivalent of about a half of a mil. So if we're hoping this passes, that will take that money out of the Monroeville, the municipality budget, free that money up for other things. And in addition to that, there are other things. Our budget is about 1.4 million right now. There are other things that aren't showing in that budget that we could compensate the municipality for. So there are a lot of other services that you provide to us. You fund our capital improvements, so anything in excess of our operating budget could go to that. I know there's a couple things that we've talked about, elevators and parking lot lights and things like that, but we are in fact in a 50-year-old building with 50-year-old problems. So we recently had a flood. We had a pipe burst in the ceiling due to some of our HVAC issues, which is something we like to talk about at every one of our meetings because we have such difficulty with it, but we have a system that's at the end of life. So that's heat and air conditioning. So, when you look at some of those things, they are necessities that we're looking at. So, I just wanted to talk about a couple of things like that. So also, some benefits that people get from the library. We have a website that's yeslibraries-yesmonroeville.org. So some of the things that I'll tell you about are on this website, and you can see. But a library, I'm personally passionate about the library. I'm passionate about Monroeville. I grew up here. I feel like we are a first-class community, and I don't want to see that status drop. So, and I think that what it is, it's a combination of all kinds of things that makes us unique and makes us special. So with the library, one of the things is, Mr. Heiss talked about living within our means. We've really been doing that. Our means have decreased over the past 5 years. We've tightened our belts as much as we can. So we've been able to, maintain that level of service. So the municipality makes up part of our funding. There's a formula for how we get other money. So we have to keep certain levels of service to get the state and the RAD money, certain amount of circulation and things like that. So if we start cutting in certain areas, it has a ripple effect. So sometimes if we lose in one area, then we lose other funding and other sources. So we talked about the library and everything being online now. Do we really need a library? And really, it's the only public space that we've got in Monroeville where people can come, and borrow, use a meeting room without having a charge and things like that. And as far as online goes, I'm very fortunate. We have all kinds of electronic devices and internet access at my house, but that's not the case for everybody. So for folks who do not have that luxury at their home, they can go to the library and use public computers. And if you know anybody that goes to apply for jobs now, no one really wants to talk to you anymore or have you fill out an application. They want you to go out online and to do that. So we really provide a service, and if you come to the library at any day, you'll see that the computers are filled with folks using them. So, so online has been great, but it's been an information explosion. So you can find all kinds of information, but you don't really know sometimes how valid the information is that you're actually looking at. And so that's another service that the library brings. Last year, we had 30,000 reference questions that were answered. So even with the internet, you know, we had 30,000 pieces of information helped or validated by our librarians. So in addition to all those wonderful things that we do at the library, we talked about, one of the gentlemen talked about having to cut back on going to the movies. You can borrow movies from the library for free. So there are a lot of services that we really offer to lots of folks that you really don't think about for the library. But some of the other things that I wanted to share, just some different studies that have been done over the past several years. One from Illinois, you know, and one of the quotes is, strong home prices have been dependent on a strong school system and the town's infrastructure. Major components of this infrastructure are a public library. Other ones in Philadelphia, they talked about a research study showed that $6 million in value was generated by workforce development activity, and that comprised book lending, computer usage, programming that was provided free for everybody. So I was one of the folks who helped gather signatures, so I'll share with you some of my informal, you know, study that I did, which is everybody that uses the library is actually not a Monroeville resident. So we had a lot of Monroeville residents, but we actually had people from other communities, people who work in Monroeville and find it convenient to be able to use our library. I had a lady who was very passionate who told me her husband is a business owner in Monroeville, and he uses our library all the time, and you know, she really finds that it's better. We had a public meeting, Libraries in the 21st Century, a conversation with the community, and I was surprised that people even showed up who weren't from Monroeville, and the reason some of them did, we had a lady whose library was closed, and she had nowhere to really express her opinion any longer. So we really feel it's a valuable asset, and I don't envy your position because it is in good times that we're in right now. And I think everybody experiences that in, you know, all the, you know, everybody in the business community, you know, everybody who's a homeowner, things are just tighter than they ever were. So, so again, you have our signatures. So it will be on the ballot in May because we've met all the criteria. So I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yes, is the question actually drafted yet? The
Yes.
actual question?
The actual question you'll see at the top of the petition, and it says, do you have a copy of one?
They have one.
So the question is, shall a 1 mil special tax, which would be equivalent to $100 per year or $833 per month on $100,000 of assessed value, be imposed by the Borough of Monroeville on all taxable real estate in the Borough of Monroeville effective January 1st, 2015 and thereafter? The proceeds shall be allocated and used only for the maintenance and operation of Monroeville Public Library. So that's, and it's all been validated. We've got some very smart people helping us who've
Don't be
worked with us.
disappointed, but the county will probably change some of that verbiage. They do that almost religiously, but I appreciate what
Yeah.
you're saying.
So I think we've.
At the end of the day, they're the boss.
Yeah, yeah. But this follows their formula and
Sure.
in plain English and things like that.
Very good.
Okay? Thank you.
One last time, ladies and gentlemen, I know I did try to close, but does anybody else like to address council? If not, we will close the Citizens Night proportion of this meeting.
Greg,
Mayor.
I'm sorry, go ahead,
Beth
Beth.
Fishman again.
Oh, go
I
ahead,
just
Beth.
wanted to clarify 2 points from earlier tonight. Ron, I am not after the fire company. And the only thing I'm asking is look and see if there's a way that you in turn can help out the municipality. I think Mr. Hess totally misconstrued my comments.
If you get a chance and call me, I'll be happy to sit down with you anytime and tell you how those funds go.
I will do that, but I'd also like to address, I mean, I understand there's a $2.1 million relief fund that
Yeah, and
ties into all that.
I'll tell you about all that.
I would appreciate that. And my other clarification is for Mr. Dice. I don't know who you were addressing, and you stated that the municipality stayed within the windfall tax last year. That's not true, because I
Beth,
took
I'm
the...
tired of you saying things like that. You can't keep
Mr.
getting up and
Dice,
doing this. You
I
can't keep
took
doing
the
it.
municipality to court to
Yes,
try
you
and
did, and
lower
you
that
lost.
tax rate. Yes, I did, and I
Okay.
lost. So therefore, the municipality exceeded the amount of the windfall tax.
But that was pursuant to a court order, yes.
Yes, it was, but that's not what you said earlier tonight.
That's what the
Thank you.
statute says, and that's what I was quoting.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I'll leave it open for comment. Seeing none, we will close the proportion. Can I close it now?
You could have closed it before.
Citizens Night proportion of our meeting. And right now, we'll go over to our 2014 budget public hearing. Is there a motion to open the meeting?
Make a motion to open the
Is
meeting.
there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think it was safe to say that we certainly discussed the budget, I think, at length. If there's anything new that you would like to discuss, we're certainly open to that, but I think we certainly massaged it down for every resident that walked up here. Seeing none, is there a motion to close the budget?
Motion to close?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll move over to our agenda-setting meeting, or our work session, if you will. Yeah, folks, for our department heads, you certainly can go. If anybody else would like to leave, I see some of the library folks. If you're certainly welcome to stay, but if you want to go, you certainly can do that as well. Now, again, we'll go to our work session, and all members here except for Linda and Ron, I think you were going to say a word.
Yes, I just wanted to inform council and the public that Ms. Gatos called me earlier today. She had some unfortunate surgery on her face and is not feeling very well. She really wanted to be here because of the topics of discussion, but she said she was in too much pain.
So, thank you, Ron, for that. And Linda, get better, hopefully.
Good luck, Linda.
I'm sorry?
I said good luck to Linda.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And right now, ladies and gentlemen, by Home Rule Charter, I have to announce that council conducted an executive session for personnel and litigation on Wednesday, February 19th, 2014, from 7 p.m. to 9:30 p.m., Monday, February 24th, 2014, from 6 p.m. to 8:45 p.m., and on Wednesday, February 26th, 2014, from 8:25 p.m. to 9:15 p.m. Council's legislative action, if any, shall be taken at the March 11th, 2014 council meeting. And also, we have another, do I have to do this twice?
No, you don't.
I was going to say, that's on my other notes. Okay, I'm sorry. Moving over to our approval, or the minutes of special council meeting of January 6, 2014. Our council public hearing of January 6, 2014, our Citizens Night meeting of February 7th, 2014, and our council meeting of February 11th, 2014. Council, are there any additions, corrections? Seeing none, we'll move over to our reports of our tax collections. Once again, council, are there any additions or corrections needed on that issue? And again, we'll move over to our payroll report. On our payroll report, once again, council, any questions, comments, additions, or corrections? Seeing none, we'll move over to our list of bills and budget transfers. Are there any additions or corrections to either one, council? Seeing none, we'll move over to our new business. And Tim, if you would, please.
Okay, we have 3 items, Mayor, for the council meeting next Tuesday on March 11th. The first one is a motion to create the new position of Director of Human Resources, and the second one is a motion to appoint Joseph Sedlak to the position of Director of Human Resources. And also is the motion, as the Library Board was speaking of, a motion to submit the Monroeville Public Library ballot question to the Allegheny County Department of Elections pursuant to the Library Code as presented.
Questions or comments on any of these items before you, council?
Do we really have to act on number 3 since they got a petition that's, we still need to act on
I
that?
think that's part of the statute. I
Ah.
think you have to acknowledge that you received it.
Okay, okay.
That is correct. Once again, council, I'm throwing that out there on any of these 3 items.
You're not taking a position, Ron, you're not taking a position on it, you're just saying. that-
Acknowledging you received it.
Right. Seeing none, we'll move over to our ordinances, and Mr. Dice, if you would.
Yes, the first ordinance is an ordinance of the municipality fixing the real estate millage for lands, building, and structures for 2014. These are all the ordinances that are needed, 1 through 8, actually 1 through 6, 1 through 5. Are all of your...
7.
No, they're all in there.
Is there a 9er in there?
Okay, let me do them one at a time. Second is an ordinance of the municipality to provide for the adoption of the budget. Third is an ordinance of the municipality continuing the deed transfer and mercantile and business privilege taxes and local service taxes. 4 is an ordinance of the municipality adopting a job description for the position of municipal manager and municipal of Monroeville. 5 is an ordinance of the municipality adopting a job description for the chief. 6 is an ordinance of the municipality adjusting the salary system for 2014. 7 is an ordinance of the municipality of Monroeville establishing a 2014 fee schedule. And lastly, 8 is an ordinance of the municipality amending the code of the municipality of Monroeville, ordinances number 2361, 2416, 2520, 2533, and 2574, and 2598 by amending and restating the rules and regulations for civil service.
Once again, council, this has been ongoing, all these issues, and as you well know, most of them have to do with the 2014 budget, but in regards to the job description, or the ordinance, I should say, for the municipal manager or the chief of police, are there any questions or comments on either one of those? Seeing none, I will move over down to, let me see.
Mayor?
Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry, Ron.
I just wanted to state that, as requested, that in the definition of manager and the chief of police are the minimum education requirements, have been reinstated. And for chief of police, I must have a bachelor's degree, and for the municipal manager, I believe it must be a master's degree.
Yes, for the manager, it's a master's degree in public administration, business or related field, which is required, and also have at least 10 years of supervising and evaluating professional staff in a government environment. Further goes on to say, experience should also include implementing policies and concepts, financial evaluation, and personnel contract negotiations and associated laws. Also must have experience in understanding employee, resident, and council aspirations. That is for the manager. I know Mr. Harvey brought that up as far as reinstating those, that level of education for the job description for the manager, which wasn't there before.
Well, the last council got rid of it.
Yes, up to this, yes. At this present time, it was not there. It had been there in the past, which was ignored recently.
But it's all back in.
It's all back in there, where it should be.
Again, any other questions on either contract on our chief or our manager? Seeing none, and then last but certainly, I just want to address that very quickly, all the changes on our ordinance for our Civil Service Commission. Again, that has been supported by the Civil Service Commission as well as you as council. So any further questions or discussion on that? Seeing none, we'll move over to our reports of our officials, and Tim, I'm going to turn it over to you first.
No comments.
Mr. Dice, if you would especially on the one issue on the
Yeah.
hotel tax.
There has been a flurry of newspaper articles and statements made at public hearings concerning Monroeville passing a hotel tax. Everybody's practicing law, some of us with licenses and some of us without licenses. Some of us with licenses have got it wrong. You cannot pass a hotel motel tax. It's unconstitutional. Monroeville doesn't have that power. The county has that power. However, I believe you're going to find that County Executive Fitzgerald is not looking to see tax increases in his election year, especially with regard to hotels and motels. But again, you're free to apply to him to see if they would consider passing a tax that would be countywide, not municipal-wide. So you're looking at a tree that's probably 300 or 400 feet high, and you've got to climb it. And I don't think you're going to ever see that tree climbed on a hotel motel tax. But I could be wrong. The fact remains is this is not the proper forum. So I want that record to be straight. I believe the newspapers were told this before they even ran the article. And then to put the article in the paper, I think, is just poor judgment on the part of the newspapers. This is the kind of thing that now we talk about and we can't do. And I'm not sure why the newspapers would go forward after they're told that it's unconstitutional to do that. I thought you ought to know that.
Anything else, Mr. Dice?
That's enough.
Mr. Wilson?
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody that came up and voiced their opinions about the budget. I don't want to raise taxes, but right now we have to. Now, nothing further on that, but I'd like to say thank you to all the volunteer fire services in Monroeville and the ambulance services. I think we're the luckiest municipality in the state of Pennsylvania to have the dedicated people. And thank you, Mr. Harvey, for your 44 years of volunteering. Officer White, I'd like to say congratulations coming off probation, and be safe and God bless. Our Parks and Recreation Group, I'd like to say that the recent brochure that they sent out, I thought was excellent. There's a lot of opportunities for people to take advantage of our Parks and Recs, and thanks for doing a great job on that. Our Public Works Department, what can I say? Everybody knows what a great job they do, and thanks for the Library Board. I just want to remind everybody we had a great meeting with the Crime Watch. We will have more, and that's it.
Mr. Duncan?
Yeah, I would also like to thank all the people who spoke tonight. And I can promise all the issues that were brought up tonight and in the past will be discussed at the upcoming contract negotiations. And that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Caleri?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I'm doing this right, but I would like to, I believe, make a motion to put on the agenda restructuring of the zoning hearing board. Is the appropriate time to do that?
I would certainly like to see that restructured.
Now's the time.
Now would be the time.
And I think that you had indicated, at least when I spoke to you prior, that the reason for restructuring it was budgetary in nature.
Correct.
There's a motion. Is there a second to put it on the
Second.
agenda?
Second.
Go ahead, Mr. Dice.
So, and I don't think that you necessarily have to vote on this, you just have to give Tim the direction.
Well, that's what I just
Okay.
wanted to make sure everybody was
Now,
okay.
what I anticipate here is that you're going to want an ordinance prepared, and it won't be ready by Tuesday. It may be ready by Tuesday, but you can authorize Tim to advertise it so that if it's done Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, he could advertise it so that you could take action on it in your April meeting. I think that's the intent.
That's absolutely correct.
So, on Tuesday, there'll be a line item on the agenda now that will indicate that, that council wants to make a motion to restructure the zoning hearing board for budgetary reasons, and you authorize our firm to go ahead and prepare, and then through Tim's office, advertise that ordinance for next week.
Everybody, all members of council are good with Tim advertising.
And we'll do that on Tuesday. Okay.
Anything else, Mr. Claire?
And you're the liaison for the zoning
I
hearing.
am the liaison.
I mean,
correct.
that should be on the record. I mean, that's where it's coming from.
Yes. I am liaison for the zoning hearing board. No, I think that's about it.
Mr. Johns?
Yes, sir. You know, as most people know from me sitting up here, I'm usually not too long-winded with my report. But you know what? You're going to have to bear with me a little bit tonight. There's an exception to every rule, and I'm going to break the rule, my own rule. I also have a couple of pictures. Joe, if you could do that for me. The first thing I'm going to do is apologize because they're not of a zucchini or a tomato. But what they are, I have I have two issues. This is Northern Pike Hill, and most everybody knows where that is. It's at the far end of Monroeville, at the Murraysville end. The hill runs from Turnpike Gardens, the red light at West Patty Lane, and goes down to Route 22 at the red light. This ice that you're seeing here is formed from a spring that, if you walk into the woods a little bit on the right-hand side, there's water that continuously runs there. That road is maintained by PennDOT, although our road crew does salt it and plow it, and we get reimbursed for that. The problem there is, if you go down there, there's 3 or 4 catch basins on that right side. They're clogged up 90% of the time. I've gone down there personally with a shovel and cleaned them out. Sooner or later, somebody there is going to get killed. You know, if you go down there, it's a picture, but it actually gets the clean out to the yellow line, and it gets sometimes 4 or 5 inches thick. So if you're coming down there at night, it could create a real big problem. I've talked to PennDOT about it, thanks to Joe Markozik, on several different occasions, and their issue to me, there's 2 things here I'm going to talk about. Their issue was, they said, Mr. Johns, you know, we cannot disturb the hillside, and I said, why? That's only part of the problem. If you go down there and look up, there's logs, I mean, my goodness, 3 foot around, there's stuff that's going to come down, and somebody's eventually going to get hurt. He said, we can't disturb the hill, and I said, why? And he said, well, we would have to close the road down. I said, well, then do me a favor, close it. I mean, that's the gateway to Monroeville. Other than going on Route 22, that road is used, I don't know what the traffic study is, but it's substantial. Could you move to the next one, Joe?
There's never been one done on that road.
Right. Now, that's part of the problem with the water issue with PennDOT. Now, there's another problem that I think is even greater than this water issue, and it's the gas. Former Senator Logan, former Mayor Logan, called me one day recently. See a little gas meter sitting right there behind the guardrail? I don't think that's a concern, but it's just to show you. People call me all the time and they yell at me. If you're coming up that hill part way, you can smell natural gas coming. It'll make your eyes water. That's how bad the smell is. If anybody ever watches the news and pays attention about the houses, the stuff that blows up recently, a lot of it. If you come up the hill on the right side, there's approximately a dozen houses at the top of the hill. If you go into Valerie Circle, which is adjacent to the hill, there's another 10 or 11 houses back there. Now, at the very across from Valerie Circle is Maria Lane. When you turn into Maria Lane, there's 2 homes there that literally have gas coming up through their basement in their sewers. And it's happened on several times. Number 4 fire hall's been down there. This stuff's been going on for a long, long time. What they do, they get down and they patch the road. They find a little problem. They put a Band-Aid on it, basically, is what they do. And thanks to Mr. Hugas, him and I have walked that hill several times looking at things. Mr. Logan called somebody recently at the top of the People's Dominion. They, in turn, said, we will send somebody out immediately. That was last week. I went down, sat down there in my Jeep. And down there is the new UPMC building and the spa, that spa building. So I sat there, and this young fellow pulls in, he come in a truck, and I didn't say anything. I'm watching him look around. And I put my window down and introduced myself. I said, "What do you think there, young fella?" He says, "Well, I'm here 3 times a week." I said, "Really? What do you mean by that?" He said, "Well, everybody's always calling, and my supervisor sends me over because of the gas odor." And I said, "Well, don't you think maybe it's time we do something about that?" He says, "Well, you know what, it's really not at the top of their concern because there's no homes right here. It's a stretch of road where it's all woods and trees and so on and so forth." Now, I do understand that they have since got a permit from PennDOT to dig that up. And I understand through Mr. Hugus, it's supposed to happen sometime early this year. And they're going to run a complete new gas line from wherever point A to point B, supposedly now. My suggestion was, why don't we get together with PennDOT and fix 2 issues at the same time? Because now I understand they're going to come under the road and run the gas line up the opposite side of Northern Pike, on the right side going down. Now, it's currently on the left side, and what's happening, I think, if I'm wrong, Mr. Hugus, stop me. I think what's happening, these catch basins, when they are working, there's a big drain pipe going under the road, it's washing the hillside away, and it's affecting the gas line, it's affecting a lot of things. They need to get together as a team. And if they have to close that road, close it. Is it an inconvenience? Sure it is, but it would be a permanent improvement, and it needs to be done. I get people every day of my life calling me, asking me what we're going to do about that gas odor. And we had recently, Monroeville Municipal Authority was over there, and they were flushing the sewers or whatever it is they do. And I happened to be coming up the street, and he waved me down. They were over in Valerie Circle, and the one fella picked up the manhole cover. He fell down on his back because of the odor come up out of that sewer and hit him in the face. That's how strong it was. I think it's an issue that needs to be addressed, and I apologize for taking so much time to talk about it, but the reason I wanted to do it is I wanted to get it on videotape. And you call me Lois? I'm sorry. I wanted to get it on videotape so I can in turn get Mr. Habala, and thanks to him and his staff for doing that for me, and get these videos, and maybe I can get them to PennDOT and get them to the gas company, and maybe they'll start to listen and do something about it.
Well, I don't know if you know it, they just did a traffic study down there the other day for the temple.
Yeah, well,
And they're going to go under the road again.
Yeah, that's another issue. On top of everything else, I understand PennDOT did, if I think so, give them approval to cut a road back through there, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But I don't think it'll ever happen. But at any rate, with that, I'm done. Sorry I was a little long-winded, I apologize.
You did very good, Mr. Johns. Mr. Harvey?
Yes, other than that we made the announcement that the education requirements are back in for the manager and the chief of police, myself and Mr. Johns went and attended a Turnpike meeting, the renovation of the Turnpike, and in Plum Borough. And I think we both had our eyes opened up of the size of the project, when initially you thought, well, it's just going to be a widening. Well, that's for sure. That's an understatement. This project is very big. They also are going to replace all the bridges along the way, including the one that goes over the Turnpike on Northern Pike that they just fixed. That's getting totally replaced. There's 3 in my ward that the residents should be aware. The one that goes over Old William Penn, totally replaced. The one that goes over Beatty Road by the community college, totally replaced. And the one that goes, the people on Center Road go over the Turnpike by Old Frankstown going to Gateway Drive, totally replaced. And when that happens, I think we're going to have to open the back end of Gateway Drive for those residents to go and come on Old Frankstown because the bridge is going to be gone. And I don't know how we're going to get emergency services there, let alone them going in and out from their homes. So I
How
think-
long did they say that would be done?
Well, now understand, they told me each bridge is one construction season. So, well, they might do them all at the same time, but I don't know. They're also going to replace the one over Route 22 that they just,
That doesn't make sense, but
and the part you're really going to like is that they told us what the budget was, did they not, Mr. Johns?
Yes, they did.
And confirmed to me that it is $25 million a mile.
That is correct. 25 million per mile.
$25 million per mile.
Wow, that is correct.
And So the engineering, they don't even anticipate being done until 2017. So everybody shouldn't jump off their, chairs yet and get ready to reroute themselves, because this is quite the project. It's not just, I don't know, I'm thinking some widening. This is going to have the berm in the middle, a pull-off lane in the middle, instead of 2 lanes, 3 lanes, and then the berm. So if you go west on the turnpike, you actually hit an area that they have completed like that. And it is huge. It's huge. And that's coming through Monroeville. And so I just wanted to have everybody forewarned that although it's a couple years, I wanted to tell you as soon as possible, because it's a big project. It's a giant project.
You might want to revisit that again in the future as well.
Yeah, as they notify me, I'll certainly pass it on to the residents. The next thing is, the people and residents of Burke Drive and Donnelly Drive, I keep announcing that there was 2 residents that wanted it posted no parking. I keep asking for input back from the residents. I don't hear anything. And then I understood that, somebody help me out here, there is no parking, and then there's no parking from
2 to 6. 2 to 6.
So that's
I
2
looked at
different
that
ordinances,
twice.
or is somebody mixing one up with the same?
The 2 to 6 is a blanket ordinance, and then you have to specifically post the street. You pass a new ordinance citing that one, and it's from 2 to 6.
From 2 to 6, not a blanket, no parking on the.
I mean, you could do that, but it's typically the no parking from 2 to 6,
Okay, all right,
unless there's extenuating circumstances.
okay. And that's it.
Dr. Griesbach.
Yes. Earlier, Mr. Harvey mentioned some numbers about past budgets and past councils, and he's correct in a lot of his statements as far as services in the past have been spared or saved because residents wanted them, and instead of raising taxes, yes, it was, previous councils decided to dip into the fund balance, which was certainly a short-sighted plan as far as preserving those services that we all have come to desire and enjoy. Although on a few of the items that he did bring up, I wasn't in a minority, and I did speak out against a few of those numbers, that's for sure. As far as the severances that he mentioned, to clarify a few things, Mr. Little did resign and got a severance. However, he was given an ultimatum to resign or be fired. It was my first week and a half on the job with Mr. Duncan and Mr. Johns. We were certainly in the minority. And just to clarify to the residents that whether he was resigned on his own or if he was fired, he would have received his severance. That's the way the contract was. He had put in his time for that. So regardless if he was fired or resigned, he would receive his severance. He was given that ultimatum, and certainly anyone in that position would certainly rather have a resignation on their resume instead of a termination. Moving on to another severance for Mr. Silka, a different situation, different scenario. His contract did not afford him a severance at that time. He did not have the time in to receive a severance. He was offered a severance by a majority of council, and in exchange, he had a gag order, let's say. He had to be quiet, but if he would have just been fired at that point, he would not have received a severance. Those are 2 important things that the residents need to understand. And for the Silka severance package, that was a meeting I chose not to attend. Mr. Johns and Mr. Duncan also did not attend that meeting. We did get some static for not attending. However, we were certainly all staying clear of that whole situation. So I just wanted to mention about the severances. Definitely a lot of good input from the residents tonight, and we always welcome that. As far as an advisory board, I think the mayor touched on that. It's not a bad idea. It's a good idea to form this. However, we are in March. Those are things, he mentioned maybe October, November, but I think that if we were to do something like that, it would be more of a late summer, early fall type of situation. However, we always welcome, us here on council, always welcome feedback from residents, which we receive here publicly and also privately as well via email and phone call. So please, anyone who is looking through the budget, it is a public document. It's online at the library as well. Please give us any feedback. And about the budget, a lot of things have been repeated here, but as far as restoring our fund balance, to get our bond rating back to where it should be, to contribute to our OPEB fund, and just so everyone knows, a lot of communities that have retiree benefits, they pay as you go. That comes right out of their general fund. In our case, it's $800,000 currently we are paying out, which comes out of our OPEB fund. We have not been contributing anything into that fund at all, so actually, we're not even paying as you go at this point for the past few years. $800,000 is coming out, and fortunately, we do have an OPEB fund. It was actually my predecessor here in Ward 2, Mr. Cooker, he had a lot to do with that fund, and he had one good idea. That was his one good idea. So I'll give him a little credit. But at any rate, it's to fund into that fund is very important. Right now, we've been putting nothing in. In long term, those costs will climb. We should be doing it $2.2 million. The legacy costs that have been promised to former employees that are retired and current contractual employees. A lot of residents speak about, these things need to be changed, but these are promises that are already made contractually. Our contracts that are coming up, refuse is good until May of 2015. Our clerical workers are the end of this year in 14, along with our dispatch, emergency telecommunication officers at the end of this year in 14, and also the police, they are at the end of this year in 14. Public Works, they have more time, August of 2015. And certainly this council is very eager to work with those unions and negotiate with those unions and try to make some long-term changes. And that's something I've been speaking about for a while as far as two-tiered systems to really change things for future employees, from new hirees, and changing the current situation as best we can. But these are certainly not things we can do immediately. And that's a clarification that certainly needs to be made. And I'll speak more about that on Tuesday's meeting. Moving on to lighter stuff, Mr. Wilson mentioned earlier, the Monroeville Recreation and Parks Department has sent out their spring flyer, so please look for it in your mail. There's a lot of great programming there to stay active and get involved with other community members. And in that packet, just to highlight one thing, is the Monroeville Recreation Girls Softball League for girls ages 7 to 18. The deadline has been extended. In the actual booklet, the deadline's coming up here pretty quickly, but it's being extended. So really, we encourage all the families with girls 7 to 18, please consider joining the softball league. Hopefully, we can get a league going there. And lastly, a big thanks, as before, to our Public Works Department as far as road crew, as far as plowing and salting, and another tip of the hat to the garbage and refuse and recycling guys. Everyone talks about plowing, but I don't even like to carry my garbage can up my driveway in some of this weather, let alone what these guys are doing at the crack of dawn. So a big tip of the hat to them and to Public Works for keeping our roads safe and keeping our services going here. So with that, that's all I have for this evening.
And I certainly don't want to belabor any of the issues all brought up, and I just want to thank everybody for coming. Joe, do you have that flyer that you can put up on the screen? I'd like to talk about that. Do you have that?
No, I don't, Mayor. I wasn't aware of the flyer.
Oh, I thought that we had talked about. That's okay. We'll do that on Tuesday. That's not a problem. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask for a motion for an executive session for personnel and legal reasons.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.